My review of Asterix and the Griffin, the 39th and latest book in the series, is now live on pipelinecomics.com. This podcast will be the shorter version of the review because the full review ran really long, like 3,500 words long, because I've had 2 years to think about Asterix, its place in this world, and what this book could be and what this book was and is. And to be honest, there's a lot to talk about in the story itself and its place in the world of Asterix. Hi, I'm Augie DeBleek Jr. This is the Pipeline Comics podcast, taking a look at European comics from a North American perspective and a whole lot more. We're sticking with those European comics right now. Asterix obviously qualifies for that. Asterix and the Griffin is the 5th book in the series from Jean-Yves Ferri and Conrad Didier. Didier Conrad. I always do that. I always get his name backwards. I just pulled out the book in front of me, so I make sure I get that name straight. Didier Conrad is the artist. And to be honest, it's his best-looking book of the series by far. Well, maybe not by far, but it is a really good-looking book. There's a lot of work put in here. You can see he's kind of comfortable with the characters as they are. He gets to add in a whole bunch of his own in here. It's a book set, in another place, so it's not in the village, so he doesn't have to worry about sticking to all of Uderzo's models for every character he's drawing. There's a lot of stuff, he's made up. You basically have Asterix, Obelix, Dogmatics, and Getafix in this book, and everyone else is new. Everyone in the faraway place of Sarmatia. When you write it, you think it in your head, and you never think of how you properly say it until you're recording the podcast. And even when I was typing it, I kept wanting to type Samaritan, but it's Sarmatian, from the world of Sarmatia, which is a real place. I had to look this up and learn a bit more about it. It's an area in the sort of the Ukraine, Russia, sort of that, far Eastern European area. They're an interesting group of people. I advise you to read the Wikipedia entry. I go over it a little bit in the review. It's all good stuff. But this is, like I said, Didier Conrad's best-looking book, I think, so far. A part of that is just that it's a whole new setting. They're in the snowbound area of Sarmatia. Barbaricum is the area. Sarmatia is the tribe, I guess you'd say. And it gives the book a completely different look when you have all these characters operating with this backdrop of a snowy forest, which he draws really, really well. And there's a bunch of half-page spreads in this book that are just super busy and super packed and well composed and just great to look at and stare over. There's a lot of art in this book. He draws, a Roman legion, well, maybe not a legion, a group of Roman warriors who go out there to find the Griffin, as Asterix and Obelix are there to help protect the Griffin. I'm not going to give anything away past that. And it's just a great-looking book. So you have that, and then on the other hand, you have Jean-Yves Ferri's story, which is a great piece of comedy writing. There is a lot of running gags to this book. There's a lot of good one-liners. The Sarmatian women, who are the warriors of the clan, are actually the models, it is thought by many, of what Greek legend would eventually call the Amazonians. So there's a lot of jokes about Amazon. Yes, the store on the internet. And for the most part, they fit in real well. There's one or two I thought that were kind of pushing it or just badly timed or not quite working as well as they could have, but there were more often than not very funny one-liners. And I'm not sure how much of that is from Adriana Hunter's translation or whether in the original French it just worked a little bit better. I've gone back and forth from the French edition to the British edition. I've read the British edition so far. As I'm recording this right now, the American edition, the Paper Cuts edition, is not out yet. So I'm reading this strictly from the British edition, which I had to import. Actually, I wasn't importing. It was already here in North America. I got it from abebooks.com. But there's just a lot of great sort of that vaudevillian humor. There's a lot of back and forth, especially with the three leaders of the Romans. They're always going back and forth at each other. They don't get along so well. There's the cartographer, the guy who makes the map that got them to the Griffin. There's the guy in charge of the Roman soldiers, the centurion. And then there's the guy who runs around with, an animal pelt around his head, who is a soldier who specifically is good with fighting animals, which apparently was a real thing in the Roman armies. I hadn't read about that one yet, but it's new to me, but I'm sure it's true. And the three of them have lots of good back and forths. Obelix gets his time in the sun as one of these Hermatian women, kind of fall in love with him a little bit. Obelix goes, not missing, Obelix runs away with the wolves, and Obelix feels sad that he's missing him the entire book. Oops, sorry, quick edit after the fact. It was Dogmatics who ran away, not Obelix. That makes more sense. Obelix was very sad. Back now to the podcast. Just lots of good stuff going on. The story is good. I think the story is, the line that they use just to hook all the jokes on, and that's fine by me. It's obviously moving another step away from the classic Goscinny Uderzo style of picking a country and poking gentle fun at its people for their customs or their stereotypes or their appearances, their language, their food they ate, all that kind of thing. It's clear they're stepping away from that, and I believe it's something that Ferri has even talked about in the past. I can't find the quote now, which is killing me. I go into this at greater length in the review, but it's not the end of Asterix. It is, it's something different. That's what you have to realize is, Goscinny's been dead for 40 plus years, almost 45 years now. Uderzo changed the book when he did it on his own, and with Ferri and Conrad, we have a slightly different take. It's still Asterix. It's just a slightly different version of him. It emphasizes some parts more than others. And as long as it's going to emphasize sort of the vaudevillian humor part of it, I'm all for that. I love that stuff. Asterix the Legionnaire is probably my favorite of the books in the series. Asterix the Legionnaire. I was right the first time. I always do that too. I always get those two confused. What I'm getting at here is it's a good book. It's a funny book. It doesn't rise to the level of Goscinny, of course. I think it's probably the second best by this team. Second only to Asterix and the Missing Scroll, which is still my favorite in part because it does touch on sort of current events of the day. Has some funny commentary on that. But I'm very happy with this one. I'm looking forward to seeing what Paper Cuts does with it because there are a lot of names that will be changed an awful lot, I imagine. And we'll see how well the Amazon jokes translate into American English as well. I'm kind of curious to see what goes on there. I've been looking at the French edition, going back and forth a little bit with the British edition to see where things were changed here and there, see how many lines were taken directly from there. I did find a couple of British one-liners that were unique to that book where the French version did not have a joke in that particular panel or that particular word balloon. Thank you, Duolingo, for teaching me enough to get through that. And now I'm looking forward to it another, a third time, basically, when Paper Cuts comes. I'll cut it short there. That's basically what I want to talk about right now is if you want to read the full review, go to pipelinecomics.com. It's up on the front page right now. You can always do a search for Griffin. It'll show up quickly. The notes for this podcast, which will basically just be a pointer to that review, will be up at pipelinecomics.com/80. That's pipelinecomics.com/80. If you have any comments or questions, complaints, etc., check me out on Twitter at pipelinecomics or email me at augie@pipelinecomics.com. Any of those ways will work. I read it all, I promise. I hope you get a chance to pick up this book when it's out near you. I hope you enjoy it and drop in the comments section of my review and let us know what you thought because I'm curious to see if I'm way out on a limb here or not. If I'm the only person who likes this kind of humor, and if I'm the only person who is willing to continue with Asterix being what it is today, because it's still a very funny book. Thank you all for listening. I'll talk to you again real soon.